Hey guys, how you doing? Welcome back to my channel. This week we're going to be going over some news, looking at the global economy, then we're going to focus down more on some Australian headlines over the past week, and then jump into a bit of crypto news, some price analysis, and that sort of thing. So obviously the biggest news in the past week was the 8.5% inflation rate that just came out, and we can just see this thing is it's on an absolute tear, and it's obviously from things like supply chain issues, but also excess printing allowing more demand, and now Russia Ukraine has sort of just added fuel to the fire. But the thing that's the most critical to understand with all this is that when you've got inflation spiking up like that, it puts the currency at risk of being debased in a way where it can lose trust and significance. And the US dollar really needs to make sure that the US government needs to make sure that they can hold on to the trust from the rest of the world, because it's the reserve currency. I believe that they're going to react to this in quite a strong way. And the first article I want to just quickly touch on is that the Reserve Governor, Lael Brainard, came out and said, the expansion is so much faster than in the past, and so the way that they tighten the economy has to be a lot quicker in retaliation to that. And so one of the thing that's going around now is people are like, oh, the Federal Reserve always says they're going to raise interest rates, and they never really do, and they're always going to tighten monetary policy, and they never really do. And it's like, well, if we look back, all the way from about here, 1983, the last 40 years, there hasn't been just a straight uptick in inflation like that, especially with no signs of really slowing. Like the Ukraine-Russia situation, we haven't even gotten close to seeing the full impacts of that yet. So I do believe that we're going to see lots of interest rate hikes and monetary policy tightening. And that's going to be, risk-off assets could keep getting punished, and I don't think that the pain's over. All right, so Russia has retaliated with a long-range bomber strike. Things are just heating up. Ukraine sinking one of their warships in the Black Sea. This kind of retaliation, and the Kremlin's come out and made a bit of a threat to the United States, saying if you guys keep supplying Ukraine with weapons, then there could be unpredictable consequences to come down this path. So this isn't going to play out over weeks, guys. This is going to be months, possibly even years, and it is just something we'll keep an eye on, and hopefully for the Ukrainian people, the Russian people, and everybody else around the rest of the world, they can come to some sort of peaceful resolution. But it's not looking good at the moment, and we can see that one of the results is the exports that Russia and Ukraine provide to the rest of the world. Probably the most significant one right now, I guess outside of oil, is wheat. 27% of wheat comes from Russia and Ukraine. Wheat is your bread, your pasta, your noodles, some of the real base things that go with every single meal. And just like everything else, when shit hits the fan, it's often the people at the lower income people that hit the hardest. Somalia gets all of its wheat from Russia and Ukraine, and so there's places that we're not even going to hear about getting absolutely slammed with food shortages and supply issues. There's multiple directions are all colliding. Multiple things from different directions are coming to collide, which are all leading towards a food shortage and supply issues of things like wheat and oil. And this is just another thing that adds to it is Biden's announced a waiver on summer ethanol, this summer ethanol ban. He's gotten rid of that, there's this E15 gasoline, which is a 15% blend of ethanol. And in the summer, they get rid of that. And it's for environmental reasons. And it can make gas cheaper if we keep using that. So they've allowed for it to be used year round now. And what that means is more farmers are going to be producing more corn, because they can then sell it off to create the ethanol. And that means that more farmers making the corn for ethanol means less farmers, planting soybeans and wheat and that sort of thing. So there's going to be less food because they're trying to create more ethanol. So they'll save 10 cents per gallon and by introducing this, but then there's going to be less food for the rest of the world as well, and just adding more pressure to the supply shortage. And we've also got fertilizer issues because of a lot of the fertilizer and the things in fertilizer come from Ukraine and Russia, which people can't get their hands on now. And there's issues with even just transporting it. This Union Pacific saying that they're going to struggle to get nearly 20% of its shipments out, and they're hiring aggressively. And just as I was saying, a lot of things coming in, colliding, causing some real global issues with the food shortages. And we're seeing different countries start to collapse under the weight of all the things that we're seeing in the economy in the world now and over the past 10 years. Lebanon filing for bankruptcy. We've got a huge economic crisis happening in Sri Lanka, and it's these types of things. Inflation at 17.5% in Sri Lanka, and I believe the Lebanese lira has lost 90% of its value over the past 10 years. So this is one of those things that ties it back to Bitcoin. Is maybe in a place like Lebanon, it's a bit harder to get your hands onto some gold and actually store it safely, or it's unsafe to have it sitting in your house because you can get robbed or whatever. And you can't afford to go and buy a house, and maybe your stock market's doing really poorly, and it just means that what are your issues to try and store some cash if the stock market's doing poorly, if it's hard to get your hands on gold, hard to get your hands on property, and your dollar is collapsing? Then it just means Bitcoin's such a fantastic alternative, and it's accessible for pretty much anyone in the world. Looking at the global wealth distribution, this is just an interesting statistic that I found, that 1% of adults hold 46% of all the property in the world, and the inequality gap's getting to an all-time highs, and it keeps on getting increasing further and further, dividing the gap. 55% of adults in the world only hold 1% of the property share. So it's people like we're just seeing that divide, and it's the inflation that is making it harder for people at the bottom to get up and get into the race, and it's also the inflation that's pushing the asset prices up. So part of this whole inflation issue is creating more of the divide. All right, and that Hunter Biden issue that's come out, I'm still baffled that a news story like that, where Hunter Biden had a laptop that has information to say that he was dealing with Ukraine and China, and looks like they were sort of taking in money through the back door, and Joe Biden looks like he was involved as well, and that story got hid from Twitter on just before the election happened. And now statistics are coming out saying 16% of people that voted for the Democrats would have probably voted for the Republican Party if that news had come out. And so by the media suppressing information, it actually affected who the president of the United States is. And then we see Hunter Biden owns a house in Malibu, and then the Secret Service are renting a house down the road from him for $30,000 a month. Who's paying the Secret Service? It's the taxpayers' money is given the Secret Service for a guy who could, might end up coming out that it's actually criminal activity what he's been doing, and we're paying $30,000 a month to look after his security guards so he can live in his mansion, so they can all live in a mansion and look after him. Like, it's to me, the issue with taxpayer money going to places that the money getting spent poorly, that really grinds my gears. And I'm loving articles where I'm loving seeing things like Elon Musk stepping up to the plate. I love that he stepped up and said, I'm going to help Ukraine provide you all with internet. I love that he's saying, hey, Twitter censored crucial information coming out, and you've banned the old president of the United States, and all this censorship's too much, and he's actually trying to do a hostile takeover to take over Twitter so he can make it decentralized and make it free speech. I just think it's phenomenal. And so the latest is that he bought 9% of Twitter. He was talking about being on the board and then pulled out of that. And part of the reason they think he pulled out of being on the board is that if you're on the board, you can only own up to 14% of the shares, and that wouldn't have allowed him to have the alternative to actually try and buy the majority and take it back to private. And so he said, I want to take it over. I'll offer you 50% higher value per share from before I started buying it, right before I bought my first Twitter stock. And Twitter declined the offer, and now he's getting a few investors together, and they're potentially going to come back with an even better offer and see if they can come in aggressively, take over Twitter and decentralize it. I just think it's dope. Nice work, Elon. This ties in with the Hunter Biden type situation, where it's Well, loosely, it's about there's $55 billion in Australia, 55 billion of federal grants over the sort of next 4 years. Taxpayers will pay 55 billion in federal grants over the next 4 years, and who gets to decide where this money goes? Who gets the grants? Often it is people like the Prime Minister that goes, yep, you can have that, you can have $1 million here, $1 million here, and then he just picks winners and losers. And it's people that get in those powerful positions. So many times it comes out of politicians are just hooking up a buddy all over the world. It's out of control. And it's a shame to see articles like this one where the Prime Minister has abandoned a pledge to they wanted to create an independent integrity campaign. It's a bit like an agency that operates to make sure that money gets well spent and it gets allocated to the right places and make sure there's no dodgy shit going on. And now he's just abandoned it, and it's a real shame to see that, because I think we need more transparency throughout the government, and we need to. There's a lack of just tightness in where money gets spent through the government. Like, it's so loose that you see certain projects like they build a toilet in a park and it costs them like $1 million, and it's like, who the fuck's the contractor that got the $1 million out of this? Like, it seems so suspicious. It's taxpayer money. There's not enough leeway, there's not enough room right now just to be blowing cash like that. Like, the world's in a really bit of a tricky situation, and we need to tighten everything up. So Australia is ranking 87th on the Economic Complexity Index. So out of all the countries in the world, Australia is ranking 87th out of how diversified our industries are, how many sectors we have. We're so heavily reliant on mining and just digging things out of the ground and iron ore that it's, we don't have a lot to rely on. And that leaves us in a very vulnerable position, because if something happens where people stop importing our goods of iron ore and coal, then we can get stuck in a really bad situation. Like, if China just cut us off completely from importing our iron ore, then we'd just dump straight into a recession. And we can see, the lack of this is, the bottom percentile of economic complexity, and we're in line with Madagascar, Mozambique, and we're behind Guatemala, and you can see the countries that we'd like to be compared to, like Western Europe and the States and Canada, etc., are miles ahead of us. So many more industries, so much more diversity. All right, so we can just see the amount of exports that are, minerals and fuels, and that is, it's black coal and iron ore, and these things are horrible for the environment. And it's allowed us as the generation that's come through to have these amazing lives, but it is a shame that we're just so heavily reliant on it, and we need to, put cash into creating certain industries and incentivize entrepreneurs to go out and make new things, and we need to prioritize not letting things like Ford and Holden just disappear or go overseas and start getting manufactured elsewhere. All right, so the Australian housing problem, it's costing Australia hundreds of millions every year. I just found this article was interesting, where it's talking about, as people get left behind and the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, it's causing things like more homeless people, and then we've got money has to get allocated in the budget to looking after homeless people that can't afford X, Y, and Z, and that's costing Australia hundreds of millions of dollars. So the divide is just it's like a snowball effect. As things separate, it just starts to cost us more and has more flow-on effects and more issues. This one is a US cryptocurrency expert jailed for helping North Korea evade sanctions. There's a guy that is part of the Ethereum Foundation, and he went to North Korea to try and help educate people on blockchain. And while he was in North Korea, he said something about, it's open source, decentralized, no one can stop you from using it. You could essentially use these things to get around some of the sanctions that have been placed on you. And then that came out, and he's been jailed for 5 years for conspiracy to help North Korea evade sanctions. And it's just one of those situations where they've just made an absolute example of him. I don't know his intentions going over there. I just assume that he's one of these crypto people that like free speech and the idea of transparency and a bit of equality. Like, he created Wikiscanner, which would track who would edit things on Wikipedia, so you could see where the information's coming from. So in my mind, it looks like He's a coder that just sort of went a bit too far, and it's a shame that this guy's going to have to spend the next 5 years in jail. He's already had, nearly 2 years in there, and he hasn't even been able to see his parents since he went to jail, and it's just a shame, and I hope he's all right. All right, so let's dive into some charts. All right, the first thing that I am going to talk about is gold and Bitcoin have a really inverse correlation right now. Right, so if we add the Bitcoin chart onto and compare it to gold, then what you start to see is every time gold goes up, Bitcoin goes down, and every time Bitcoin goes up, gold goes down. So just quickly show you a couple of the examples. From here, gold down, 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 down. At the same time, Bitcoin up, 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 up. And then when Bitcoin topped and started going down, gold bottomed and started going up, right? And even the reverse, gold coming down, Bitcoin going up. So you can see it's very clearly down versus up. It's very clearly an inverse correlation. You can even see it right now. We're having an uptick in gold and a downtick in Bitcoin. So what am I using this for? If there's an inverse correlation, then it means if gold breaks out to new all-time highs, Bitcoin's probably going to go down. And this is the kind of chart that looks very, very bullish to me. We had just a classic bear market, a really long sideways consolidation. We're facing resistance on the upside, but it looks like we're just about to break out into new all-time highs. So if gold makes new all-time highs and it's inversely correlated to Bitcoin, you could expect Bitcoin to crash. So there's one thing that I'm looking at which makes me think that Bitcoin might have one more leg lower. Let me just jump into where I think Bitcoin's going to go to. But before I say any more, I just want to remind everyone, I'm not a financial advisor. This isn't financial advice. And I think the most important thing is to let you know that even though I think Bitcoin price is going to go down, I've still got half of my money in Bitcoin. And the other half I'm ready to put it, not half of my cash, but let's say the portfolio, the part of my portfolio that goes into crypto, half of that's still in. Even though I think it's going to drop, even though I think it's going to go down, it's half of it's still in, because if I'm wrong, which can obviously happen, the price starts going up from here, I want to hold on to some Bitcoins forever that I'll never sell. And so if the price goes up from here, I still win, right? It's crucial, because if you go all in or all out and you get it wrong, then you're screwed. And I've got cash on the side. So if we go down, I can buy back in. So I'm going to win if it goes down, win if it goes up. Now, where do I think we're going? The first thing that acts like a magnet to the Bitcoin price is the 200-week moving average. So the average of the last 200 weeks. We can see it found support in here, 2014, 2015, found support here, found support here. My guess is this is probably going to act like a magnet, and we won't be able to start our new rally until we've touched that. Now, what else happens? If we look back here in 2015 to 2017, we rallied up, and then our retracement levels were here. This is where we found support, and then we crashed down to the next Fibonacci level. So if we were to do something similar, which I think we're going to, we go from the bottom of the rally to the top of the rally, which is here, drag it across. We found support on this first Fibonacci level, exactly the same as last time. And if we break this level, then we come straight down to the next fib level, which, quinky dink, lines up with the 200 weekly moving average. Beautiful. So that's our price target, around the $22,000 mark. $22,000 mark, that also coincides with something that I'm looking at, which is this crazy pattern that I've noticed that no one else is speaking about, that I just think is absolutely beautiful. And we can see that every time Bitcoin, let's just pull this into there, let's just pull this into here. We can see that in the past, every time that Bitcoin starts a market cycle, like here, there's a support line, right? This is the support line for the start of this market cycle. And then later on, we capitulate through there, that marks the bottom, and then we can't get back above that line. Same here, we had a support line, we capitulate through that support line at the end of the downtrend, and then later on we can't get through that line. Same again, we got our support line, becomes really obvious now, doesn't it? Support line, we eventually capitulate through that support line, marks our bottom, then we can't get through that line. So what have we got? A support line, which I think we're eventually going to break through. And then later on, we can't get through that line. So my guess is this is probably going to be our line that we eventually face resistance for all the way through to 2025. So my guess is the highest we can go by the middle of 2025 is just under 300,000. But at the same time, it means the highest that we can get to where we were before it's in the middle of 2023. And even then, we couldn't, if it hit there at that time and this hypothesis played out, we wouldn't even be able to get past there in the middle of 2023. So we could come up and get rejected there and come back up and break through it later, but I don't think we've got a good next year in front of us, unfortunately. But that's not true. In saying that, if we drop down to 22 and then middle of next year, we come up and test 66, then that's a times 3. So if you've got cash on the side and you can still trade it right, then even though it looks like we're not going to make all-time highs within the next year, you can still get a 200% return at times 3. All right, what else have we got going on here? Silver looks like a Wyckoff reaccumulation. So, you've got your rally up, and this is a reaccumulation zone where smart money accumulates down here, sells up here, makes a little bit of profit in this trading range, and eventually we come in and break out. If you have a look at, that's a conventional labeling of a Wyckoff trading range. Have a look at that for a second. Basically looks exactly like what silver does. And at the same time, we've also got Bitcoin dominance, which is Bitcoin versus altcoins essentially. So if this is going down, altcoins are doing better. If this is going up, Bitcoin's doing better than alts. But just because this is going up or down, it doesn't mean the price of Bitcoin or the price of altcoins is going up or down. It just means that this can be going up, right? I think it's going to go up, but that means that the crypto market can still be going down. It just means altcoins go down faster. And that's what I think is going to happen. I think that as this goes back up to the top of this trading range, the crypto market's going to have its capitulation, and the altcoins are going to go down faster than Bitcoin. So I'm not holding any coins right now, not financial advice, just me personally. And I think that it'll get stuck in this trading range and pop out, and Bitcoin, even when the next market cycle starts, I think Bitcoin does better than alts at the start. So when I go back in, it's just going to be in Bitcoin for me. That's the Wyckoff accumulation. So it's a selling climax, automatic rally. Second test in phase B, spring and off. So have a look at that for a sec. Compare it to that. Is basically the same. It looks perfect to me. Selling climax, automatic rally, second test in phase B, come down. Here's our spring, and so there is the equivalent of here, last point of support. Hopefully we can rally up to the top of the range and then break out. That's it for me today, guys. Hope you had a wonderful week. I'll be back here next week with another update on the wider economy, the Australian economy and the crypto. I hope you enjoyed that. Don't forget to smash the like button, hit subscribe, share it with a friend, and I'll see you guys next week.